Good morning, everybody. It's for some of you it's early, for some of you not so early. For me, Midland. I'm a farmer. I'm usually up at 7 Eastern time, which is even earlier for you. So I am Byron Ballard, and I'm so pleased and so honored to be part of this event. I'm a new writer in the Llewellyn stable of writers, and my book came out in February. It's called Roots, Branches, and Spirits, The Folkways and Witchery of Appalachia. And, it's generally available, and I want to encourage you to go out and get that. It's gotten some great reviews. It's sold a few copies, and I am an Appalachian person. Right now I'm sitting in Appalachia. I'm sitting at my little farm. I have a little forest farm in the Southern Highlands. So back door is open. Tea kettles on. So come on in. I want to talk to you a little bit about my tradition. And then I want to demonstrate for you one of the most helpful techniques that I know about changing the course of events, and that is to do an egg binding. So as I talk more, you'll hear my real natural accent come out. I always start presentations with my presentation voice. And then I get into it like a homegirl, and that's just how that is. So I'm glad y'all are here with me today. We're going to spend a little bit of time together. I'm going to talk to you for about 15, 20 minutes, and then I want to open up the floor to any questions or comments you may have. One of the thrills of my life these days, because I'm doing so much traveling, is to meet people who are part of what I refer to as the Appalachian Diaspora. Now, this is a big region. The Appalachian mountain chain starts way down in Georgia and goes all the way into Canada. Hello, Canada. It's a different set of cultures all up and down that ancient mountain chain. For many, many years, I would say the Appalachians are the oldest mountains in the world. And then someone at some event said, well, they're the oldest mountains in the world above water. And then I would say they are the oldest mountains in the world above water. And then somebody else said, well, we're not really sure. There may be older mountain ranges in Africa. So now I say, this is among the oldest mountains in the world. But you can feel it here. Any of you who have been to this region know that there is a level of old, deep, slow energy. So it's not like the Rockies. It's not like the Himalayas. It's not like the Alps. It's a different kind of energy from old mountains that were young when the world began. And through this region, through this part of the region, which I call the Southern Highlands, through this region run two of the three oldest rivers in the world. And my geologist friends tell me that those rivers are older than the mountains. So you start to get a sense of how things move here and how things change here and the general energy of this place. And some people find it very relaxing. Some people find it suffocating. And others settle into it, like settling into the hot springs north of here. And they absorb not only the energy of the place, but some of the history and bits and pieces of the culture. My people are mostly Scots-Irish people. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that immigration story because it's just bonkers is all I can tell you. So my people, some of my ancestors and some of yours too, if you're in the Appalachian Diaspora, they came from the border region between Scotland and England. And those people were always the militarized zone. So if Edinburgh declared war on England, The troops moved through there. They burned everything in the borders, killed whoever was in the way, and just kept going. The reverse was also true. So this group of people who have come to be called the Border Reavers and sometimes the Borderers. The Border Reavers lived much as their Celtic ancestors had done by cattle raiding and sheep stealing. They were fast and they were silent, and they owed no allegiance to government and no allegiance to religion, which made them dangerous on both counts. They didn't recognize the border, so that the strong families and clan families were inter-border raiders, and they lived inter-border. So they were a lawless band as far as government was concerned, a lawless band of renegades, which is not unlike my people here in the mountains of North Carolina. Fairly lawless. We won't call the law on you, because once you bring the law in, everybody could be in trouble. So this worked out for hundreds of years, hundreds and hundreds of years, until Elizabeth died without heir. And then they made James VI of Scotland James I of the United Kingdoms. And we're holding fast now, because that United Kingdom thing may not last over the next 3 or 4 years. But for them at that time, first order of business was to clean up James VI's reputation, because it wasn't but so good. And the second order of business was to get rid of these people in the borders, these dangerous brigands and outlaws in the borders. So they did all those things that were done at that time, the 1600s. They killed some of them. And if you've seen Braveheart, you know that can be quite a colorful and extractive tradition. Some went to the continent to be mercenaries, because they were very good at what they did. But there were so many parts of the culture that were just completely destroyed. Excuse me. I've got festival crud already. One of those that breaks my heart a little bit, because I'm a horse person. They destroyed what was called the Galloway Pony. And it was a small horse, very sure-footed, very light on its feet. But because that was one of the primary tools of these raiders, they destroyed them all. And there are people now who are back breeding to achieve that breed again. So here's my scruffy little old ancestors, and they're trouble to everybody and not much good to anybody. And the vast majority of them that didn't hide out in the hills there were picked up by their scruffy little necks, and they were dumped into Ulster. Now, they weren't but so happy there either. I mean, maybe we just restless people were not happy really anywhere. So they stayed there just a few generations, long enough that now we carry the name Scots-Irish or Ulster Scots. And then they decided they wanted even more removal from where they were in their homeland. And they came in, many of them, through the port of Philadelphia. And then they met the second great influence on Appalachian folk magic. And those were the Dutch people, the Pennsylvania Dutch. And they were farmers. They were just settling into the area. And they shared a lot of knowledge. And I've been blessed to spend time with Dutch people. And we've been comparing spells and magic. Because a few years back, I decided I was going to become a spell catcher. Just like the song catchers of 100 years ago, who traced those haunting mountain ballads back to Great Britain. So I've been tracing some of the histories of Appalachian folk magic, and it was fun to compare notes with those Dutch practitioners. But my people just kept moving west, 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 and finally, I like to think they took a hard left turn and went down the valley of the Shenandoah, and they scattered out all along that beautiful wide valley until my people got here to the Southern Highlands of Appalachia. And there they met, arguably, the greatest civilization there were to encounter, and that was the Cherokee. So those are the primary influences on this folk magic. And I'm not saying there were not enslaved people here, because there were, but because this was not a big plantation area, that the influence of enslaved Africans on our folk magic is small, not negligible, but small. And it certainly is smaller than those three great influences. So here we are. And I want to show you today a technique that I've used on several people. And it is a handy technique that I would not call a bane exactly. And some of you may know I'm a bane worker and have done that for a long time as a folk magician. But I'm going to do for you today an egg binding, and I'm going to show you how that works. So I've got here an egg candle because I'm traveling. I don't have any raw eggs. But you take a raw egg, a hen's egg is fine, a duck egg is fine, whatever kind of egg you want to use, as long as it's fairly solid. I wouldn't use a reptile egg because they're a little too squishy. So the point of an egg binding is to slow down, or if you can, stop behavior, either in yourself or in someone else, so that you can use this to from tying up their puppy, or you can use this if you want to stop smoking. So it's a handy, handy tool. And this is how it works. So you take your egg, and then you're going to set your intention, as we always do. You're going to set your intention of, and I'll do this because I never was a smoker, so this will be an easy one for me to say. I am going to stop smoking, and I need all the help I can get to do that. So I'm taking this egg, and I'm writing on it, I am now a non-smoker. I'm writing my name, Byron Ballard, is not going to smoke anymore. I am going to use all of that cigarette money to save up and buy 3 acres of land somewhere in West Virginia. You get the point. You're going to cover the entire egg with writing. Now, your best choice for a writing utensil is going to be a plain pencil, a soft pencil, so it's nice and dark. You can use a pen, certainly, but the writing surface is not good. And if you use a Sharpie, it's going to tend to smear, and you're going to get all kinds of ink on your hands. So just use a pencil, write it all down, cover the egg entirely with writing. And the whole time you're doing that, I want you to be nice and grounded. I want you to be focused completely on your intention. Then what you're going to do is take some thread. I usually use this as embroidery floss. Traditionally, what was used here was a kind of sisal rope that is called binder's twine. It's the kind of rope that holds a bale of hay together. That was traditionally used here, but that's harder to come by, and it's not as comfortable to use. Embroidery floss is very, very soft. But what you want to use is something that is biodegradable, and I cannot stress this enough. You want all this stuff to be able to rot wherever it is you end up putting it. So you've written your intention all over this egg, all over it. And now you're going to leave a little tail of this floss out because you're going to tie it all up in a knot. And then you're going to wrap the entire egg in embroidery floss or whatever string you choose. Now, sometimes I use black, sometimes I use red. This one is a kind of a rosy pink. It'd be like a love candle, wouldn't it? And you're just going to keep wrapping and wrapping. And I'm not going to wrap the whole thing. You're going to keep wrapping and wrapping and wrapping until it is completely covered. Then you're going to pull out that little tail. And I'm going to snip this off with my scissors. You're going to take that little tail and you're going to tie a hard knot. And if you have a sacred number or a magical number that's particularly appealing, I'm sorry, I've got to tie it in my lap. I can't tie it in front of you. Then use that. I always, for this and Cluties and other things, I use a series three knots, 3 knots, 3 knots for 9. So it's all covered up and it's all tied up. Now, traditionally, you would have buried this immediately. But what I do is I throw it in the freezer for a moon cycle. So right now we are just days past new. So I put it in the freezer at least until new moon next month. And then I'll pull it out. And then you've got a couple of options. So you can bury it off your land. You don't want to keep it on your land. Or you can throw it into swiftly running water. Now remember, it's just a hen's egg with a little bit of biodegradable thread on it. So it's not a problem. What I like to do is I like to bury it, and I'll scoop out a little hole, and I let it thaw because I learned that lesson. Then I smash the egg and let whatever insects want to eat the inside of the egg, and then I bury it. And I want to tell you about how I did learn that particular lesson. And I took it right out of the freezer and tried to smash it with a rock, and that was not pleasant. Not pleasant for me, and not pleasant for my arm, and not pleasant for the egg. So if you're going to freeze it and then bust it, let it thaw first. I promise that is a good thing for you. So you can use that for all sorts of things. I'm checking our time. And it is what I think of as a low-level interference. So you can set it. All magic for me is dependent on setting the right intention to get the work done that you want to achieve. So you set the intention for the work. My intention with that egg was I was going to stop smoking. Now you may find that you need to do another egg in 2 or 3 months to just kind of boost it up a little bit. But an awful lot of people find that setting the intention and using the egg as the tool is the key. So try that if you want to, and see how that helps you. If you want to do self-help with all sorts of things, like remembering to floss your teeth twice a day, or it's time now you want to get healthy. So you do an exercise egg that will remind you that you want to get healthy and get a little bit more exercise. But all of Appalachian folk magic is full of absolute practicalities. It is not in any way ceremonial, and it is not really in any sense religious in the way we would think of it. Now, it comes down to us through a firmly Protestant Christian filter. And the earliest practitioners and the people that I learned from were, in fact, Protestant Christians. My family are Methodist, and they did all of this work. But now they didn't assume that they were doing it. They assumed that they were being vessels for the will of the higher spirit. And they sometimes referred to that as the Lord, and sometimes that was just the Holy Spirit moving through them to achieve these things. But many people who are part of that Scots-Irish and Appalachian diaspora come down with, this is like coming down with a cold, isn't it? They have these interesting sets of abilities, what they call prophetic dreaming. So you would dream something that a few days later would come true. There were people who could lay on hands and do hands-on healing. There were wonderful incantations that came down to us. They're from our ancestors to do everything from taking the fire out of a burn to healing thrush to helping the baby move through mama's body a little easier and a little smoother. I'm gonna wrap up in just a couple of minutes, but I can't not tell you about the Churn Song. And this is something I heard when I was a little bitty girl. For those of you who don't know how churning goes, there's usually a conical shaped wooden vessel that has cream in it from the dairy. And there's a stalk in the middle of it. And so you go up and down until all the cream has agitated enough to become solid and to be butter. So the song I learned to go with that is it's Come Butter Come. And it is a wonderful, wonderful work song that is always also an incantation. And it's this: come butter come, mama's standing at the gate waiting on a butter cake. Come butter come. And you can hear how the rhythm of that come butter come is the rhythm of a work song. So here's my shout out to you. If any of you know women's work songs that also have an incantation quality that makes them a spell as well as a work song, I'd love to hear from you. I had put in the chat, you can get me at info@myvillagewitch.com. And I'll even hold up my little mug. Here I am, the Village Witch. So thank you all for listening this morning. It looks like we've been at it about 20 minutes. And I would love to go ahead and open up the chat now if y'all have any questions or comments. If you don't, I'll just keep singing. That's all I got to say. Philly, I love Philly. When I was in Philly, Andrew remarked, thank you from Philadelphia. When I was there, they took me down to the harbor so I could see where my people had come in. It was lovely. My favorite books are old books on Appalachian folklore. Hey, Christine. One of those, no, if you hadn't asked me, I could have told you. I'm going to look in the references in the back, but there's some really good older books on Appalachian folklore. Our Southern Highlanders is a good one. Dixons of South Carolina. There's a marvelous book called Hey, Southern West Virginia. That's not the name of the book. The book is called Wayfaring Strangers, The Musical Voyages from Scotland and Ulster to Appalachia. And that was done by Fiona Ritchie and Doug Orr, or buddies of mine. And it's got a CD with it of some really beautiful traditional Appalachian music. So those are some good ones. There's some really good ones from a author called Barbara Swell. And she does these little bitty books. One of them is like Children at the Hearth. Hey, Peggy, I'm so glad. I love it when West Virginia checks in. Yeah, come from farmers. It's a big deal, isn't it? Okay, my family's from West Texas and New Mexico. Love your stories. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen. Hey, Holly, thanks. How many of you are part of that Appalachian diaspora? You have grandparents here? Black Irish, that's right. Restless. Our people really are restless. It's interesting, isn't it? Thanks. Please do read my book. I've got 2 earlier ones too. You can find them at my website. Harlan is a beautiful and tragic place. One of the people in the chat said they were raised in Harlan, Kentucky. Traveled to the Ozarks. I've just left the Ozarks, Serafina. How do you do an egg binding to stop someone focusing their attention on you? You can make yourself invisible to them. Someone asked, how do you do an egg binding to stop someone from focusing their attention on you? You could do an egg binding to make yourself invisible, but I wouldn't do that. I would do a mirror spell. And if you want to send me an email about that, I'll send you particulars about how to do that. Hey, Heather Greet. Long removed. Yes, in fact, Jennifer developed, and she's saying that a lot of similarities with their folk magic and ours. I would love to talk to you about that because I love to figure out how things changed once they got here. Obviously your people are higher north than mine, but they may have come from pretty much the same place. Thanks, Laura. Well, my friend and Alicia and I do this podcast called Weird Mountain Gals, and you can find us just about everywhere. And we do a lot of singing on that. I don't know a whole lot about hex symbols because it's not part of my tradition. I just know it in general because I know some Dutch people that do that. Hey, Raina Star. Someone's asking, are you familiar with divination on observing eggs when you are breaking them? Yes, absolutely. That is something we do too. We divine a lot. In fact, I was trained as an omen reader because my grandmother had prophetic dreams, and it seemed like that would be the next thing for me. Is the next thing in the family would be somebody who was an omen reader, and I am. So that I had a fella several years back who he wanted to know, he was asking about dream interpretation, and he said, well, me and my wife were at this pretty little cabin, and I stepped off the porch, and then she stepped off the porch, and then a snake rolled off the roof of the porch. And what does that mean? And I said, well, what kind of snake? Well, which way did it go when it landed? Well, what time of day was it? I had all these really specific questions. And he said, you just can't tell me what a snake rolling off the porch, off the roof means? And I said, well, I can, but it won't be a very good divination. So I needed to get a lot more details than that. Any place to find Scots-Irish? And you said it the way, see, we say Scotch-Irish down here. We don't say Scots-Irish. Scotch, you can do a Google search on that. There's plenty of websites that will give you surnames, plenty of them. Oh, thank you. She just put in my my website, myvillagewitch.com. Well, y'all, thank you. What a good conversation. And know that you can reach me. I mean, festival season has begun. This day after tomorrow, in fact, I leave here and go out to Wisteria, up to Wisteria for Appalachian Summer Solstice. So check that out. Some of that I think is going to be virtual too. And then I'm going to be at Starwood and Hex Fest and just a bunch of places this year. So I will answer you as quick as I can. Our family traditions, says Donna, are mostly lost, but I'm working on reclaiming some of those from our from Celtic and Choctaw history. Yeah, Choctaw history is hard because so many other tribes kind of absorbed that history. My grandma always told me to say Scots-Irish. I know it is kind of a controversy around here. Most people I knew said Scotch-Irish, but yeah, Scots-Irish is a better way to put it. Thank you. I'd love to. Oh, Jennifer, please, would you send me an email so we can get connected? Because I'd love to know more about that. Were you the one who said you were from Cape Breton? Because I try to play some fiddle from there. Ooh, badly, I'm afraid. Alan Lomax, yeah. Oh, I've got an Alan Lomax story that I can't even tell on camera. Whoo, terrible Alan Lomax story. And that's how it is. The stories that we receive, our received wisdom on stuff. Sometimes when you go back, it's like, whoa. Oh, thank you. Megan sent me a little note about that. Yes, absolutely. Celtic colors in October. What else can I tell you? It is time to wrap it up. One more question? Thank you. Hey, Llewellyn, let me sing on one more thing. So there's a charm that helps take away a burn. And it's not a song exactly, but you put your strong hand, your dominant hand over the burned area, and you go in a circle clockwise, and you say, come 3 angels from the north, take both fire and frost. Come 3 angels from the north, take both fire and frost. You repeat that 3 times, and it draws the fire out of the burn. Try it and see if it works for you. Well, thank you all so much for being here with me this morning and getting up early or being up late, or however it worked in your time zone. Check out my book. Check out the books of the other presenters on here. Well, that may not exactly be true. Yes, it does work on sunburns, Serafina. That burn spell works on sunburns. And it works on that little burn we always get when we take pizza out of the oven. You know, the one that happens right around here. Well, thank you all so much. Have a really great day.